in control of your own timing, be in control of your own destiny. So always exit, on your terms, not on the banker's terms or on, the fund's terms. You'll be okay. And this is why quite a lot of kind of private high net worth individuals go out and make quite a bit of money through playing cycles or, just understanding the fabric of real estate and what represents value and what doesn't. Whenever we have a problem in our office, as a principle, I like to start with the truth. Be upfront, be honest, don't spin it, don't lie, share the problem. One of the things that I think is really important, again, when I'm talking to younger guys and they're coming in for advice or mentoring, is
Adam, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how you doing?
Very good, thanks. It's been a long time coming, getting you in. So
yeah, I'm sorry about that.
You're a busy man, and no doubt we'll come on to what's been keeping you busy later in our conversation. But to kick off and to start, a place that I always like to start these conversations is how and why did you get into real estate?
Like small potted history of my background, I've always been in property. So since my political science degree at Birmingham University, I actually didn't know what to do. And I remember quite vividly going on a walk with my dad, and he sort of said to me, "What the hell's going on? What are you going to do with your life?" To which I had no response.
Post-uni?
Post-uni. And he sort of said, "Okay, well, look, let's think about it. And why don't I send you off to 3 different friends of mine who will work in different industries, and you can decide what you like." And so I went to the lawyer and the accountant and the surveyor. And I remember very vividly being extremely bored in the legal practice and even more bored in the accountancy practice. And then actually I think I had a pause, and I then went to Dad's friend, a guy called Alan Messing, who still runs an agency in the West End, leasing properties and acquiring properties. And I absolutely loved it. I mean, he was up and down, and he was in every different location in London, flying around everywhere, looking at buildings, talking to people. And it really matched my personality in terms of making connections and networking. And so that's how it really started. But, I think the issue with making a decision today is quite different, right? Because there are so many qualifications that you need. There's a lot of barriers to entry for younger people, which make it a lot harder. So in a way, I was really fortunate that, you sort of could still use relationships in that time to get in and get in front of people. And actually utilizing another one of my dad's contacts, I ended up working in Walthamstow for a firm called Stretton's.
So before we come on to that, your dad wasn't in property?
Yeah, so he was an estate agent. So he had an estate agency practice on Temple Fortune High Street, which is a little high street in North London. And actually I used to go in there quite a lot and do some viewings for him. And I also really enjoyed that, to be honest with you. The problem wasn't the job, it was the people, right? Residential real estate is very much, personal decisions. There's a lot of emotions that go on, even letting your properties out and selling your properties. It's, the most important asset that you have for many people. And so, I could see him having some difficult and stressful conversations with people over the time there. But no, I really enjoyed it. And actually my wife worked for him and many of my friends worked for him over the years. So it was an amazing experience and a great agency that's still there.
But it didn't inspire you enough to take it on or kind of dive into the residential?
I think he would have been very upset if I took it on, because he invested so much in me through the years to see me kind of segueing into a residential agency, which, he set up, and credit to him. He doesn't give himself enough credit. He set up no qualifications, did a lot of different industries, and then ultimately ended up settling in the early 90s on a state agency. So, actually it's been incredible for me, and I still really enjoy the residential aspect of real estate. But and to be honest with you, I didn't really know. I guess that's the answer. I didn't really know. I didn't know whether residential was my future or commercial. I think the important thing that he wanted me to have was like the backdrop of, academia. So he wanted me to have, the RICS qualification. That's something you could always fall back on in the future if, things didn't work out. So he, he is and was an inspiration for me in that respect.
You went to University of Birmingham, as you said, to do political sciences. As a kid growing up, what kind of kid were you?
I think slightly odd. I think I always enjoyed older and younger company. So I think I always relished more relationships with my parents' friends than I necessarily did with my peer groups. So I had a good network of friends, mainly outside of school. But I sort of didn't, I always was looking at kind of the end in sight. I wanted sort of fruitful connections and relationships. And the problem, I suppose, through the teenage years, as I'm experiencing with my own son now, is that, there's a lot of nonsense, isn't there? Growing up and joshing around. And I just wasn't really into that. So, once I got into university, really I flourished and enjoyed the company of my peers. But yeah, it took a while to mature, I think. And I was dyslexic growing up as well. I still am dyslexic. So I needed a lot of help through academia. And, again, like my parents both really pushed me and spent a lot of time with me, helping me achieve what I could achieve in terms of getting the qualifications that I managed to ultimately do. And of course, back then it wasn't really accepted. And, dyslexia was sort of, doesn't mean that they're not very smart. That was sort of the driving force, because they get their D's and B's the wrong way around, and takes them ages to write. But by hook or by crook, I sort of somehow managed to get through A levels and through 2 degrees and and an RICS qualification. So
maybe not book smart or smart in the classroom smart, but smart in kind of worldly and other applicable ways.
I think what I'm blessed with is being able to sort of gather knowledge through experience. And I think using experiences through, my student career and my work career, and actually making the most of those experiences to guide me in the future has been really helpful. Being able to, I think, take the right messages out of those.
You landed at Stretton's, if I'm not mistaken, as a management surveyor.
Yeah.
In Walthamstow.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah. The commute was a little hard. And I was doing these night courses at Cass Business School. So we had to do a working day. So I had to commute from my parents' house where I was living still, which was in deep, dark North London, to go to deep, dark Northeast London. And there's no easy way to do that. Kind of got to go into King's Cross and then back out again. And then go back into town for 6 to 9 p.m. lectures, and then eventually get home. So yeah, it was a bit of a slog for 2 years, but the work itself, Stretton's actually, still there today, still people there from when I was there, 20 odd years ago. And it's a great business. And I actually got really good experience because it's very much ground up real estate. It is someone who has a lock-up shop on the Lee Bridge Road, in East London, that is their pension, that's let to maybe Kebabish, and you're the guy that they send around and you have to measure it and talk to the tenant and do the rent reviews and dictate. Back then we used to have to leave our in tray and our out tray, which is so foreign to people working today. But it was really good experience, and something I wouldn't take away. And even today, actually, if I have someone who's interested in getting into property and sort of the mentoring that I do for people, I always say, look, go to the Stretton's auction room. This is where it happens. This is where it starts. This is, ground zero on property. The faces and the people and the financing, all the kind of stepping stones to investing in a piece of real estate or the life cycle of a piece of real estate is the same whether you've bought a £100,000 house in, the north of England or whether you've bought, £1 billion property in London. It of course there are complexities, but there are also a lot of similarities in terms of, the bits that you have to get right.
So it gave you a good foundation, good bottom up kind of approach.
Good bottom up, yeah. Good bottom up approach. But not to discredit Stratons, they do some brilliant larger stuff as well, and they become and continue to be one of the big names in East London and the city fringe as well. So very grateful for my time there.
You left to go to Nelson Bakewell.
Yeah. So people probably don't even know what Nelson Bakewell is these days because it's.
We've had a couple of people on the podcast who are ex Nelson Bakewellers who've then Capita takeover and part of the fallout on that.
Yeah.
But before that, it was like leading kind of niche, mid-sized firm maybe, partner driven.
Yeah.
Charlie Allison.
Yeah. All those names were there when I was there, and Philip and Simon. So I spent a wonderful 5 years there. I did a couple of years in the West End leasing team, which I absolutely loved. And when we have West End leasing in our current portfolio, I kind of want to get involved because I really enjoy the transactional side of it. And again, the networking side, because it is a community, the West End agents, and they're all doing deals with similar people. And, you can do a deal with someone 4 times a year and then not see them for 10 years. And all of a sudden you're back doing a deal with them again, which is of course the nature of acquiring commercial real estate is that you have advisors on both sides. So I really, really loved that. I thought it was such a incredible way to really understand a specific market. And actually I was going to continue it, and I accepted an offer from JLL at the time to go and do West End leasing with them. And I thought, I've done the little firm or the medium firm, niche firm, Stratons. Then I'm doing the mid-sized firm, Nelson Bakewell. And now I've really landed, and with the big boys, JLL. And it sort of was quite nice because I wasn't a property qualified guy when I didn't do my degree. I didn't go to Reading or Oxford. I transferred, over a couple of years, and I tried to apply for JLL and CBRE and all those guys, and they all said, no, we're not going to look at you because you haven't got the right qualifications. It's quite a nice full circle to come back and think that JLL wanted me. I quite like that. But then I went to see Charlie, who ran the investment team at the time. He said, Adam, come in. I hear you're leaving us. I said, it's so funny because a space has just opened up in the investment department. We thought you'd be ideal to do it. Oh, that's funny, isn't it? So I ended up having quite a difficult conversation with JLL and say, look, I didn't really want to come, but actually this is really interesting investment, is sort of where I want to end up. And I ended up staying with Nelson Bakewell for another 2 or 3 years, and I'm working in that sphere, which I actually didn't enjoy as much as leasing, funnily enough, even though the disciplines of what investment agents do today is probably closer to what I do today. I actually found the cut and drive of the leasing market much more interesting.
But you felt you needed to get the investment exposure because of where you wanted to go longer term? Yeah,
I think stepping stones. And, sometimes it's not a deliberate move towards one direction. I think you have to be an incredible sort of 18, 19, 20-year-old. And there are those out there who really know, right, this is what I want to do and this is where I want to end up. And I've seen a few of them, and they are formidable people and someone I can't relate to from my own experience at that age. But I thought that it was a good thing to do. Obviously, the transactional sizes were bigger, the fees were bigger, the salary was, potential was greater. And so that was attractive for me. And we did some amazing stuff, actually, in Nelson Bakewell. It happened to be the time where the team acquired the Covent Garden estate, which is now obviously part of Shaftesbury Estate. So I was involved in a very small way in that acquisition. And again, I kind of relied on sort of very industrious approach, right? I was very much looking at alternative ways. I wasn't the guy that was sitting there waiting for the brochure to come in and then, everyone would go to Structured and try and throw the deal into them, and try and get a fee out the back of it. I wanted to try and do things a little bit differently. And actually, to be fair, Peter Trinder, who ran the team at the time, Guy Powdrill, they were the same. They encouraged it. They let me be free, and that was the beauty of working for, I guess, a medium-sized firm. Is that yes, you don't have the structure of the corporate entities, but you do have freedom to kind of do your own things, earn your own fees, and make your own way, and actually build your own experience. And it was great from that perspective. There's one very small story actually, which is about structuring. I remember I called the chap Daniel Parnes at Structured Pearl and Coots, who was the guy there, and I said, I think I've got a really interesting deal for you on in your patch. It was in Great Portland Street, and I left him the message, hung up the phone, and then I realised I got it totally wrong. Right, the buildings were somewhere else in London. I just got the name of the road wrong. So at the time, you had something called Focus, which is now CoStar, and it sort of had information on each property. And I spent about 45 minutes going through each one of the properties on Great Portland Street and trying to call the people, the numbers that were there, the owners there, did land reg search and cross-reference the two. And no one answered. And I was conscious that I was going to look like an idiot in front of Daniel because, I wanted him to accept future deals. And one guy did pick up. I think it was 118 to 122 Great Portland Street. And he said to me, yeah, we're the owners and we're interested in selling. He said, well, we've only just started talking about it as a family, but yeah, we're quite interested. Why don't you come in and see us and we can have a chat about it? And they own these 3 shops. And just as I hung up the phone to him, Daniel called me back and I said, I've got this interesting deal for you. It's 118 to 122 Great Portland Street. And I just created an opportunity out of nothing. And so I kind of enjoy doing the sort of slightly quirkier stuff rather than
waiting for a brochure and punting it into people to say, would this be interesting?
Yeah. And Peter actually has some really interesting clients. We ended up buying a monastery in North London for one of them, which was an interesting inspection. And the nuns were still there actually when we first started going around. So that was really good and great experience, really, really great experience.
Did Peter and David Perlman buy it?
No, so they said, look, it's a bit rich for us. They did actually say, look, we're there at a number. They didn't want to accept. They were very aspirational, their pricing. So they said, but look, you can market it for us. So I said, great. So I got a sales instruction and we ended up selling it to Howard de Walden. So it was great. It was really good.
You were there until August 2008.
Long time ago, yeah.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
GFC settling in at this stage, or?
So I think it was. It was. But I think I may have left just before sort of it really got very hairy. So I don't think as an investment agent, I really experienced sort of the famine that went on for 2 or 3 years as a consequence of the financial crisis. And actually was on the other side at that time at Delancey by then, sort of, waiting to see how bad it actually got. And that was really the mood music back then was, do we go now or is it going to get worse? I didn't really experience it as an agent, but it must have been terrible. And obviously I knew at that time a lot of peers who were losing their jobs and actually went off and did different things as a consequence. So, and to be honest with you, one of the things about investment agency, which was, really frustrating, was you could do all this work, and it could come to nothing. And you have to be a very, very thick-skinned and, stable person, or not perhaps, but to really ride that through the notion of so much abortive effort. And then, you could take literally to the day of exchange and you're done.
The deal's off.
The fee's gone, 6, 9, 12 months work is
out the window.
Yeah.
And are you saying you just didn't have that in you?
I just didn't have the didn't have the temperament for it, I don't think. And I think there's quite a nice, being a principal has a lovely life cycle, has a lovely life cycle effect to it. So, you are involved through the lifetime of the asset. I'm just thinking back now, some kind of my thought process. But I think one of the issues with both leasing and with investment is you're there for a snapshot in time, right? You let the property, you move on, it's done. You don't see it again for 5 years. You sell the property, it's done. It's nothing to do with you. Whereas actually, the transaction marks your start of an involvement in the property as a principal, and you're only done when you're out of it, or when your warranties and indemnities have expired, or your retention has been paid back. So, it's lovely to work now with assets that you are really part of your day to day, which is not something you could do as an investment agent.
So is that what you were really mindful of, and you wanted that kind of control or that responsibility or that exposure to the full life cycle or business plan?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest with you, my whole career, I've just been an opportunist. So, seeing opportunities as they come, and the opportunity to, first of all, talk to Delancey and then ultimately get a job with them, was something that came to me. And so, I took that opportunity. If it was, I don't think it was as deliberate as sort of saying, right, I want to be a principal and I want to move there. I think it was an opportunity that I thought was too good to pass up, and, ultimately went for it, and, forever grateful that I did.
And what was the opportunity?
So I joined as, I think it was an investment executive. And actually I arrived thinking, I know real estate, I've done leasing, I've done management, I've done investment, which is sort of top of the pecking order in a agency environment, because obviously the fees are really big, and everyone, including the MD, always is interested in what the investment guys are doing, because that really affects their cash flow. So I kind of thought, I know what I'm doing. And I turned up and I realized I knew absolutely nothing. I was as green as they could be, in spite of having been in the industry for 5-6 years. I knew nothing. And that was really my first 2 years at Delancey, realizing how little I knew.
I don't think you're the only one who's had that realization. I think lots of people have that realization.
Yeah, when they move to principal side.
Yeah, quite. There's almost an arrogance or an ego that comes.
I'm quite blunt about it. I really thought I knew what I was doing. I've been around for a little while, and I thought, and I mean, the amount of red pen on my first paper that I presented quickly, I felt sort of the same sensation that you get when, you've been given a D- in a piece of coursework that you've done. It was deep.
Except this is something you're passionate and really interested about, and it's your career, not a subject that you're not so interested in.
There was quite a lot at stake, so I had to kind of get busy quite quickly.
For people who don't know who Delancey are, can you just give a bit of context to the business?
Yeah, so Delancey is a business which was set up by Jamie Ripplatt and Paul Goswell, and it is a real estate private equity fund. And at the time, they had just established a new fund called DV4, which was a £1.1 billion evergreen fund, which meant that they could recycle their existing capital. One of the big challenges with closed-end funds in terms of time is that you're not in control of the timing of the exit, whereas, through this incredible vehicle that Jamie and Paul had set up, they had as much time as they liked, and they could pick their timing of exit. Which actually is one, as I discovered as I spent more time there, as one of, the Ripplatt's ethos, very much, be in control of your own timing, be in control of your own destiny. So always exit, on your terms, not on the banker's terms or on, the fund's terms. And then you usually, given the trends of the last 100 years of real estate, maybe there are some exceptions, people might have bought shopping centres in the last 20 years that perhaps, won't ever be bailed out, but usually you'll be okay. Because, there is a trajectory which goes generally upwards when it comes to certainly London real estate and, probably UK real estate. Incredible 7-8 years there, working on the fund, and the incredible thing about Delancey is the quality of the people that you're working with. Everyone is really exceptional, and they didn't generally sort of hire younger guys as I was in my late 20s. It tended to be people with a lot of experience who knew what they were doing, and me. So I really am forever grateful for the kind of osmosis that I got from, just being able to sit along these people. And I probably learned more through, listening to what else was going on around me than I did by the actual work itself. But the principles of real estate investment that I adopt now are very much formulated by the environment that I worked within there. One of the things that I think is really important, again, when I'm talking to younger guys and they're coming in for advice or mentoring, is, don't be shy. Whatever position you're in, don't be shy of like vertically splitting the work. I think too often, you get into a state where actually, you're the MD or you're running the department and you just do the kind of high level stuff. And actually today, I'll still go up on a roof and look around. I'll still, go and get involved with the rent reviews and read the lease and look at the numbers. And I want to stay current. I'll look at the VOA website to get the rates and, all this stuff. You just don't want to lose touch of that, because how can you be making decisions that are quite seminal in the future of the asset when actually you're not able to do the building blocks of the work itself. And of course, there's a limit to how much of that you can do, and you do rely on other people. But I really think that is, one of the things Delancey do exceptionally well is, give people a very rounded education where no one gets, too big for their boots in terms of the work they do. Everyone can be doing, everything at any time. So yeah, it was really something.
For someone listening to this who maybe has a similar background to you, worked in management, advisory side, done some leasing work and then some investment agency, but who's kind of maybe looking to move to the principal side, what was that kind of skill gap that you massively missed that the first year or two you had to get up to speed pretty quickly on? Was it your numbers? Was it underwriting? Was it having a better understanding and appreciation of putting business plans together and driving value, but also having backup plans?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good question. And thinking back, it really was everything in terms of, as an investment agent, you kind of gave a very rosy picture of what the asset could be. And, you would never consider, the challenges of financing, what happens if things go wrong? What happens if the building next door gets demolished just as you're trying to lease yours? What happens if, there's a seismic collapse in demand. So it's really, I suppose, scenario planning, which I guess falls into kind of business planning and investment committee board papers, the curation of those, and really being able to think of, the various things that can go wrong and can go right. And I think the issue with the agency side is that you're there for one purpose, and usually that purpose is to sell a picture, right? It's to sell, a piece of space that you think is gonna, in the leasing context, provides beautiful natural light and working environment for your staff, et cetera, et cetera. Everything's good. As an investment agent, you're saying, well, look, we just leased this floor at one price, and surely you can get the same rents on the other floor. So, surely it's good to buy. So you're almost stuck in that very linear way of thinking. And it's about broadening to, really every aspect that can happen. And really that there was a huge knowledge gap for me, right? I didn't know about, any tax structuring, corporate, any of that, because that's hidden from you. The principal does that behind the scenes. I think the very best agents, of course, are still, very much involved in that nowadays. But certainly with the level of deals I was doing, we were there as the guy to find the person to buy or rent it, and that
take your fee and move on.
Was our job, and we were done. So I think I actually think today's young professionals are better than I was. I can't speak for the whole of my peer group at the time, but I think actually they are a lot more rounded. They are more interested in probably a multifaceted real estate industry rather than just staying pigeonholed in what they're doing.
Helps having the internet as well and access to information.
Yeah, the internet existed, it just took a long time.
Delancey is also a phenomenally entrepreneurial outfit as
Yeah.
well. Have you got any recollections, or what was your kind of favorite deal, or?
Yeah, I mean, amazing to be, involved in some things like East Village, which is the athletes' village in the Olympic Park. We were involved in really iconic assets across London and the UK. I think what was great was the opportunistic nature of what they did. So there was a sort of philosophy of no stone unturned. So I often give the example that, one day you could be looking at, some strategic land with a caravan park in it on the outskirts of Newcastle. And if it made the requisite returns, it could kind of qualify for the fund. Obviously, a lot of other dynamics that needed to go into it. And the next day you could be looking at, a £500 million, shiny new office building in London. So it really was very diverse in terms of the assets that we looked at and ultimately the ones that we bought. But one of the amazing things and that's come out of it is relationships, network, and advisors are really the key to success. And of course, I had the privilege of working with Jamie and Sir John and plenty of other guys there who are really top of their game. And I do remember talking to Jamie one time about an asset that was coming to the market, and it happened to have quite a high profile owner, and I sort of didn't expect them to know them personally, and he sort of said, "Oh, my father knows him quite well, write to him." And Sir John was just round the corner, incredible man. He had his 3 secretaries who were all there, all working on his behest, kept them all busy. But on this occasion, I wrote to him, and almost within 5 minutes of pressing send, he was sort of walking past my desk and said, "Come on then." So where are we going? I said, "Well, we're going to go and see, the guy you mentioned that is, he happened to be a very high sort of well-known businessman across all industries, not just real estate." But he was like, "Oh, we're going to go and see him." I was like, "Okay." So I get my bag and get all my papers. So I try to work it all out. And I had the most extraordinary meeting with Sir John and this high-profile businessman, where I was sort of sitting there thinking, "Oh, I'm the son of an estate agent from Stanmore, and here I am with 2 sort of legends of the game who are both talking about hundreds of millions of pounds worth of transactions and a life that frankly is incredible if you're judging it by business and commercial standards." So that was really something. Returning to the Athletes Village in the Olympic Park, which is now East Village, that was again a real seminal moment for me to not only be involved with the acquisition of, it was £500 million acquisition, but also be involved in be in an office of just by myself, setting up Get Living London, which is now Get Living, and creating what is now one of the really big names in multifamily housing, or PRS as we call it. So this exposure, I suppose, is the main thing that I got out of my experience there, and made a ton of mistakes, right? A ton of mistakes, and got lamented and pulled up for them every single time. But each mistake is an experience and something you learn from. You don't learn so much when you get things right. So I really cherished the time there. Look back on it fondly. Can't believe it was so long ago. 8-9 years ago now.
Quick one from me. If you haven't already subscribed or followed this show on the podcast or app where you listen or watch, please do. It takes 10 seconds and helps tremendously. I've got really big plans for the People, Property, Place podcast, and that one small action really, really helps grow the show and the presence and enables us to keep doing what we're doing. So if you haven't already, please follow or like on the platform you watch or listen to. Thanks so much. You spent 8 years at Delancey. I know you had a small stint at Resolution as well, but I want to kind of focus on CC Land, just mindful of time. What was your thought process and why did you want to move away at that time?
Well, I mean, I think as I discussed, when I joined Delancey, I was very much green. And I think it's fair to say after 8 years and the incredible people around me, I did feel like I was a more rounded principal and had some really good knowledge. And I really wanted to, again, on an opportunistic basis, take it to the next level. And so the opportunity came to join Resolution, which was great to get exposure to a pan-European fund where I was running the UK portfolio. So more responsibility there. But also they'd just been taken over by Asian capital, which, was increasingly and still is today, a very big feature in the London real estate and actually the UK real estate market. So Resolution, great experience, incredible assets, really lovely group of people. And then, quite quickly afterwards, not through sort of any proactive attempts, I was approached to set up and create the CC Land UK office, which, in truth was too good an opportunity to pass up given the quality of their assets and, their aspirations for the future. So that happened all in 2017. Looking back, almost 7-8 years now. So again, the opportunity to move my career on an opportunistic basis to the next thing, I think really that's what drove it.
What was the opportunity set at CC Land, and what were you looking to kind of build?
Yeah, so I think what really attracted me to the business was that they were going to do things a bit differently to other Asian investors coming into the UK. I think they very much were focused on building a UK team,
as opposed to it being run out of Asia with a small satellite team and all the decisions out of there.
Exactly. I think they recognized that they needed people with experience to run the type of assets they had aspirations to buy or who had already bought. I was given the opportunity to build a small team, and we are a small team in the UK, but a small team of really very experienced guys taking on my kind of learnings from my years at Delancey. And we still, of course, report to Hong Kong, and we have a very slick reporting structure, but it's, nothing like the sort of bureaucratic process that you see with other organizations. I don't just restrict that to Asian organizations. I think often when you have overseas investors investing into London, you speak to the London teams, one of the sort of behind closed door frustrations they have is that, I actually can't do what I want because I need to go through so many rungs to get to a decision. And really, it's a very crisp organization. It's very clear in terms of where the reporting lines are, and they do kind of listen to me, which is always helpful as well. What a portfolio, coming in, they just acquired Leadenhall Building. They already had acquired Kingdom Street and a bunch of other assets in different vehicles with an aspiration to do more. So
they've got a significant amount of capital, big aspirations. And different to Delancey, right? Because there, and this is again, you're always learning, right? There it was very much, you get to kind of IRR threshold and, you're seriously considering whether you buy that or not on a risk adjusted basis. Whereas here, returns are really important, but actually it was, do we want to own this asset? And that was a question I sort of really never asked myself. And, does it tick the box in terms of its status for our business to own? And that is a consideration that we have, right? Is this a iconic enough building? Does it transcend across,
not just the London real estate market, but across, international real estate markets. And that is the ethos that we very much run. And, why you've seen the sort of assets that we've acquired being, of very high nature, high quality nature. Yeah.
Is that part and parcel of being a kind of a family office or a billionaire behind it from an ego perspective? Or
no, I think, do you know what? As I've got older, personally, I've kind of always taken the view that, if there's money to be made, then, you should just buy whatever's most profitable for you. But actually, there is logic behind it, which is that, if it's really appealing to you and internationally really appealing, then it's going to be really appealing to everyone, probably always.
So there's a liquidity aspect to it.
I think liquidity is an important point. I think also, there is probably a bit of status, prestige, and that is important to our company, to own assets that you're proud of. But no, I think it's a slightly different mentality. And actually, if you look at the sort of sectors that we focus on, which is mainly office and, residential, that sort of transcends to your end user as well, right? So if the asset is beautiful and, you want to own it, then invariably someone will want to lease it and work in there. Or, in the case of the residential, someone's going to want to buy and live in there. So, I think there is a real thesis behind it. It was just different to what I was used to, right? Which is, if the returns fit, buy it.
Yeah, caravan park on the outside of Newcastle.
Yeah.
With some other criteria, of course.
Yeah.
Whereas I guess you've got to have a box in your spreadsheet of ego or prestige, underwriting that on a particular scale.
I mean, it's interesting when you talk about spreadsheets. I think it's really important that to dwell on that for a little bit, because I am not a huge advocate of buying off spreadsheets, and I do think intuition and instinct and experience plays a huge part in decision making, not only just acquiring assets, but also in terms of restructuring, etc. I do think today there is too much of a reliance in certain businesses on, what does the spreadsheet say? And there is an intangible thing. And this is why quite a lot of kind of private high net worth individuals go out and make quite a bit of money through playing cycles or, just understanding the fabric of real estate and what represents value and what doesn't. And you don't necessarily need a spreadsheet to back that up. You might, and we do, right, spend a lot of time using spreadsheets. But there is also an intuition, which you either have or you build or you grow, over your career. And I would always encourage people, if they're interested in becoming a principal, regardless of what sector they're in, they should go out and really understand, how to understand value in what they're buying, not just from your desk and an Excel spreadsheet. I think it's important.
You're not the first person to say that. But it's interesting. I feel like it's a bit polarized at the moment. There's some people that are very kind of spreadsheet first, lean into the spreadsheet and then will apply some kind of logic, gut feel, and kind of real estate nous against it. And then there's others that maybe a little bit more old school or more property focused that are a bit more kind of gut feely. Yes, you need to check the numbers and make sure that it stacks, but they're more kind of property gut feel rather than just trying to financially engineer real estate to hit a particular return hurdle.
I mean, I sit firmly in the intuition camp. But I do think you need to go out and see things regardless of what camp you're in. The notion of sort of writing a spreadsheet and, deciding whether you're going to go on a viewing off the back of that, to me is quite foreign. I think if obviously you're going to look at, it's not so crazy and so out of kilter to the existing market before you go and see it. But, I want to see real estate. That's the industry that I'm in. I want to be, and you'll learn something, right? You'll learn, they've done a really good job on the toilet, so I've got a toilet refurb to do in my building, or they've done something in the bike facilities, or isn't this an interesting fit out? I should find out who the contractor is and pass that on to my tenant who's looking to improve what they're doing. There are things that you learn by the very nature of sort of getting out there. And, I'd much rather do that than, write a spreadsheet, frankly. So, I know where I am. I mean, others will make their own judgments, and who's to say who's right, who's wrong. But
You don't want the tail to wag the dog.
yeah, yeah. There's plenty of that, and I do think that, you know, there's also a real focus, you know, when you're negotiating a deal, even, that people can get really bogged down in kind of minutiae, and you sit there and you think, you know, there's 4 advisors on my side and there's 4 advisors on your side, and they're all charging, you know, £600 to £1,000 an hour, and the sort of size of this problem is like 25 grand. Like, if we spend much more time speaking about this, we, you know, it frankly doesn't matter which way it goes, because we've already spent that money on the fees. So I think, you know, focusing and sweating the big stuff rather than worrying too much about, you know, minutiae is really important.
Can you give me a picture of the portfolio as it stands today?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk sort of generally about the portfolio that we look after, rather than specifically kind of CC Land Hong Kong listed companies portfolio, because we also do things for other mandates within our business. So we have the principal assets that we have are the Whiteley, which is the former shopping centre in Bayswater. We have the Leadenhall Building, known as the Cheesegrater. And we have a big holding in Nine Elms, which is a big residential development. We also have sort of less core assets, because they're all, you know, significant £1 billion plus holdings. But we have office building in Paddington, and we have we look after also an asset just off Bond Street, an office, and then a small hotel in kind of the city fringe. So, you know, a mixture, but, you know, the principles are offices, residential, focused, Nine Elms, Bayswater, and the city.
Big ticket, chunky, prestigious.
Yeah, really.
Internationally renowned, as you touched on.
Yeah, you can put
Flagship.
a nice picture of any of those buildings or collection of buildings on your wall and kind of say, okay, that actually looks quite nice. In fact, there are plenty of pictures of the Cheesegrater right across London skyline pictures, aren't there?
Not just in your office wall, across many people's offices.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges with managing big ticket trophy assets, especially through the kind of the cycle which we have been through and are entering into?
Yeah, I mean, look, you can't control the capital markets. You know, that's the reality. And so, you know, when you have situations where values fall, naturally, you know, if you're in the market and you're truly in the market, even if you're unleveraged, right, you're still going to have issues with your portfolio. If you're leveraged, you're going to have a few more. So I almost put sort of financial markets to one side, because you almost can't control, you know, what yield your exit is at. You can do a really, really good sales campaign to sell at the end, and you can lobby your valuer as hard as possible to get a great result on your valuation, but ultimately it's kind of out of your control. So focusing on kind of the asset level, you know, looking at something like the Cheesegrater, it's constantly, you know, a jigsaw puzzle where we have 18 tenants over 45 floors. You know, we are there in their faces all the time, sort of saying, hey, what do you want to do next? Are you growing or contracting? You know, can we accommodate you? And actually, you know, one of the amazing things about the Cheesegrater is that over the 7 years that we've owned it and I've been involved in it, we have actually only once done a deal with an external tenant. So all the interest has come from within the building. So you've had people moving around, contracting, growing, and you know, that's been great, because it's about relationships, and you know, that's sort of what really drives what I like to do. You know, when we started out, we had only one floor at over £100 a foot. I think we now got 11 over £100 a foot, which, you know, is quite unique for the city. So it's just keeping the momentum, really. You know, we're fully let. You know, we don't have enough space. In fact, the next lease is up in 2027. So, you know, there's going to be a few juggling acts to do in order to keep everyone happy. But as long as you're talking to people, you're showing them, look, I'm telling you the truth there, right? Because people think, oh, come on, you've got some space there, you can find me something. If you're open, candid, upfront, with your management style, I think, then you often get the best results. You know, we whenever we have a problem in our office, we sort of sit there and say, oh, okay, how can we deal with this? You know, how can we front it up? You know, do we tell them this? Do we tell them that? And invariably, you know, as a principle, I like to start with the truth. You know, be upfront, be honest. You know, engage with someone and tell them, look, this is the issue we've got. Don't spin it. You know, don't lie, but share the problem. And it served me really well, right? In terms of the years that I've been working, it's you know, it's a way to really leverage off relationships and, you know, feel like you're a partnership. And actually this hierarchical relationship of like landlord tenant now, I think is for yesteryear. I think you have to be partners. And, you know, just because it's the only industry, isn't it, where they pay the rent, they're the customer. And yet when you write down like landlord and tenant in a structure chart, they're underneath you. You know, you'd always think that actually as the customer, they're the king. And so that approach, you know, I really try and, you know, use across all the kind of actions that we take towards these buildings.
What can you tell me about the background of CC Land, but also the chairman?
Yeah, so CC Land, I mean, obviously I've only been involved in the last 7-8 years, but prior to me arriving, they were big holders of real estate, predominantly in Hong Kong and mainland China. And, you know, they took a strategic decision to come out of some of their holdings, and looked across the world really to sort of pick a place where, you know, the chairman and the board thought it was appropriate to invest, and alighted at London. And I'm grateful they did. But you know, they really thought about it in terms of, you know, where else could we go? And, you know, London, you know, I always say that if you ask someone before the kind of whole Brexit debate started, you know, what are the top 10 things about London? I don't think its membership or the UK's membership of the EU would have featured in that top 10. It would have been, you know, the school system, the legal system, its location, its language, its financing, its financial institutions, you know, so many other things in the list over and above its membership. So, you know, so the board still sit in Hong Kong. You know, they give direction from Hong Kong. And the chairman, you know, likes to come to London. He comes and visits us and sees the assets. But, you know, his background, as I understand, is quite varied. You know, he started out in wholesaling, and then over the years has, you know, built this incredible property portfolio, which, you know, which is iconic. So, yeah.
Scaled up. How many people are you over here in the UK?
So there's just 5 of us here, and as I said, you know, they're a high quality, high functioning group of individuals, but we really, you know, run it like a sort of family office, and we rely on really good set of advisors around us. So, you know, when I think about building a team, for me, because there's only 5 of us, I think of not just the team that sit within us, but also the team of advisors around us. And, you know, I'm very fortunate to have a great bunch of people across different businesses, you know, and disciplines, be it legal or, you know, surveying practices, tax, that, you know, I have a really close relationship. You know, even the guys who do our marketing, you know, we have a great relationship that I can call them at 6 a.m. or, you know, 10 p.m. Sometimes they're not that happy, but you know, they will do it for us, and they will make things work. And I think, you know, that's another thing that really through my career, you know, it's taken a while to sort of get to the point where you feel like you've got your people, you know, the ones you can really trust in, and you work symbiotically on any transaction that you're working within. So, you know, my advice would be, you know, make sure you find people that can work in the style that you do. And you might be somebody that's, you know, totally different to me and will require, you know, totally different advice. But for me, the skill set that I look for are the bits that, you know, that perhaps I have shortcomings in, and they can explain it to me very clearly very simply at any time of the day, because you never know when you'll need it. So yeah, I'm really grateful for not only the guys that I work with here in London, but also the advisors, that we've built up.
Yeah, it's not just the internal core team; it's everyone that kind of contributes and pulls it all together. You touched on kind of marketing there.
Yeah.
The occupational landscape is competitive, right? How do you see kind of maybe technology or social media giving you a competitive advantage when it comes to driving rents and attracting occupiers?
Yeah, I think we're yet to see really the full effect of this move towards social media, AI, etc. Because I think still the old traditional ways exist, right? You still have somebody taking you around to view a property, but there have been advancements and things probably that we don't even notice have happened organically that if ourselves 20 years ago landed here today would be a bit flummoxed about. But I think it's just doing the things that we already did day to day better and more efficiently. And I'm reminded of a story where actually we're marketing one of the retail units at the Whiteley, and it was one of the really big units. We wanted a really iconic restaurant, and one of the guys you've had on your podcast already, actually, who's very good at social media, did a post sort of with a bring it to me ideas for an iconic restaurant in London.
That was a couple of months ago. I remember seeing it.
Yeah, maybe even a year ago now. And I sort of know him very, very well. So I sort of messaged him and said, what about the Whiteley? He was like, maybe. I'll put it on the list. Anyway, fast forward 6 months later, a trip to Amsterdam to go and see the restaurant that, he was acting for. And, we signed the deal. So, and they're opening hopefully next year. So, so it is, there are little tidbits and little, things that are happening and impacting probably a conversation we would never have had because maybe he wouldn't have thought, he's the guy for it, or maybe the agents wouldn't have picked it up. So I do think, social media will make a difference. I do think AI is ultimately going to make a difference. But, I am a big believer still in, personal interactions. I think, you take that away from your working life, and I just can't see how it improves it. So, during lockdown, it was miserable. I found it miserable because the joy for me is actually being able to learn and interact with other people. And, growing up through my career, as I say, I learned more by sitting in a meeting room, not participating, but listening and learning, or, listening to somebody else's phone call, or, observing interactions and the way people work, than I did, doing my own work, as I said earlier. And so, the notion that someone could do a job on Zoom, certainly our type of job, where they just have no interaction and they simply participate in the things that are in their diary from Zoom or Teams or in their inbox, to me is quite foreign. I think, unfortunately, won't lead to a rounded individual.
Transactions across the board have been suppressed for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Although it seems like there's a little bit more buoyed optimism and a few more deals are being announced throughout React News. Can you just give me your assessment in terms of the kind of the market and the opportunity from the type of real estate that you own and go shopping for?
Yeah. Well, I know you have a question at the end of every single podcast, so I don't want to spoil that. But, I do think that it's perhaps quite a dull answer, but, in a world where we feasted on low financing for so long and real estate has done that, naturally there's going to be a correction because everyone's consolidating their own existing portfolios and, is their inclination to then go out and buy. So I think people are dealing with their own house first. But also, I think that there's had to be a shift in expectations. Everyone, risk-free rates are now a lot higher. And so, real estate, which isn't risk-free, has to move, step by step with that. So I think, naturally we are a market that is inherently linked to to interest rates and to financing costs. So we'll see what they do on November the 7th, whether interest rates come down. That will all help. So, and kind of the sentiment towards that helps. And sentiment, again, is another huge part. It's a real buzzword in our industry. I can see the seeds of hope. I don't think actually, you've seen a huge amount of deals trading at all. So no one's really taken a huge haircut on their portfolio as such. But it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next, 6 months to a year. I suspect that there will be people who are sitting on capital that need to deploy it. And so pricing perhaps won't be as bad as the valuers will have you believe it. And of course, one of the great things about this market is that the occupational market is so robust, especially London offices. We see in our portfolio, huge demand for very best space. And I think that goes back to the COVID point, right? That if you're going to come into the office, you want to come into a really nice office. You want to attract your staff in. You want to give them something over and above they can get what they can get at home, right? So there's been this drive towards quality, and owning really good real estate puts us well placed to capitalize on that. So I think we'll see. The reality is that if London is going to get back and the UK is going to get back to building offices and residential, there'll have to come a point where values exceed the cost of construction, right? So I think that's always a good measure to say, what's the replacement cost of, this office? And, what's it going to cost us to get it to kind of a brand new state? And if that's less than rebuilding the whole thing again, and you believe that the market is there for the long term, it will always exist, you probably should buy it and refurbish it. Maybe not at that moment, but you're probably buying yourself quite an interesting deal. So I think always looking and being cognizant of, not only demand, but also, the long-term picture. And certainly if you've got wealth that can back you into perpetuity, there will be times, and today may well be one of them, where it's really opportunistic to come and buy something that frankly you wouldn't have been able to buy 5 years ago because it was just too expensive.
Lots of the podcast listeners will recall Whiteley's, the cinema, the ice rink, derelict kind of part of town. What can you tell me about the plans that you and your partners have for the asset?
Well, I mean, the plans are in action. They're happening now. So we're almost done. People are living there. So we've managed to keep the incredible facade, but knock down everything behind that. And there's 139 homes, which are there, people living in. There is a Six Senses hotel, which is, blow your mind, incredible, 70,000 square foot spa, amenities, gym.
Opened?
Not quite open, so opening next year. Look forward to meeting you there in a dressing gown. And then there's actually 21 shops, restaurants, gyms. So we have Third Space, Everyman, so the cinema's coming back. Thank goodness, because I'd have got a lot of grief for that. And then really interesting independent shops, sort of high quality, but also, things that reflect the neighborhood, useful neighborhood amenity rather than, just sort of glamour shops, right? It's, and I'm a big believer in place creation, of course, through the Delancey years and East Village, etc. That was something that was we really focused on, and very conscious there to not, whilst it's a beautiful new piece of real estate, in a part of London that is extremely well located, equally it's on its own journey to sort of improve and level up. But we've got a beautiful public courtyard in the middle, and it's really one of those projects that in your career you sort of will look back on and say, wow, I can't believe I was involved in that, because not only is it an iconic name, but also the architecture is just, unbelievable. And, the success as well, right? We're 100 units sold out of the 139. The hotel has obviously got 6 senses. We've only got 3 more shops to go. So it's been a real journey, taken a little longer than we hoped. But again, going back to like why real estate, why I love it, it's, you can, when we acquired it, joined the joint venture, you could go around and it's this sad old place that's been, riddled through time, that sort of died to Westfield, and is no longer fit for purpose. It is the definition of obsolete. And now, reimagined, reinvigorated, working with incredible people, great partners. You sort of stand there 5 years later and think this is just, one of the remarkable things about being in our industry. I think it really encapsulates it very well.
Adam, as we draw to a close, a question that I ask everyone on the podcast is, if I gave you £500 million worth of capital, who are the people, what property, and which place would you deploy that capital?
So I think what my answer is going to be, which is, I am by nature opportunity driven, opportunistic. So I don't want to shirk your question, but I think in every sector there are opportunities. It's just, effectively judging it by its individual merits. Having said that, I will give you an answer. I do think London offices are really interesting. I think the occupational market is there to stay. I think that having something where you have the ability to create a first-class working environment for somebody that, has the fundamentals of being close to a transport node, is, not compromised in its very bones and structure, can of course pass all the environmental credentials that, we're very conscious of now in the real estate world. I think you can really, really fly and succeed with that. Those opportunities will be rare, but I think I think it's worth watching what happens in that industry. It really has taken a torrid time in terms of values, but I'm very confident that London has a robust desire for a high quality office space, and at the moment it's frankly a little out of favor in the investment world. Also I think sort of slightly out there and probably not from my day-to-day reality, but I think housing remains a very big issue in this country, and I think the person that can solve the delivery of low-cost housing outside, ground up, new build, unserviced land where you need to get planning that can take decades to do, will be successful. So I think, and we see sort of individual investors doing this, taking, certainly in the regions, older homes, perhaps turning them into flats or splitting them into, a series of all-inclusive units. You'd call them HMOs, but it's a bit of a dirty word. But someone who can solve that crisis in a big way, I think there are opportunities there. It's difficult, management, organization, granular set of income streams is really tough. But I do think that, we have a growing population. We have a desire, and rightly so, to provide high quality housing. The notion of, really big homes that, people used to need for, their day to day has probably reduced a bit. I think people are happier in higher quality, smaller spaces. I think as an industry, and, the government themselves, we need to look at ourselves and see, is there another way? I struggle with the kind of higher rise, council homes that have all their issues. I struggle to see how they can be effectively repurposed, because, and likewise with ground up development, with all the problems that, of the length of time that all takes. But, I think it does tick quite a lot of boxes, the repurposing of, existing stock that we have, being able to do things quickly, efficiently, and, see a clear exit. Funny sort of way, similar to London offices, right? You've got an unloved office building that, has the bones and has the right attributes. It's much easier to underwrite because you've only got a 1-2 year timetable to be able to get in and out of it. So yeah, I mean, look, people will say sheds and, other opportunities out there, but my gut instinct sitting there today, these, for my money, these are the things that I would be looking to invest in.
Refurb to rent, as it were.
Yeah, but doing it in a really high quality fashion, I think
Institutional grade,
yeah. And I think we have a responsibility also as landlords to not just pick kind of the cheapest of the cheap. We should be looking at, longevity. And, one of the good things out of the environmental agenda, and I think there are good and bad things, is that it drives us to look at, long-term sustainable product that we put into our buildings. And actually, as an institutional investor, linking it back to CC Land, that is one of the nice things that we're able to do because, we tend to hold into perpetuity. We're able to commit for the long term and therefore able to sort of justify saying, well, we're not actually going to put, the cheapest BMS system in. We're going to, that we can get away with. We're actually going to put something that we know will stand the test of time and, and will last. So, I think, that's an important conviction. There's a lot of, real estate industry has a lot of a bad reputation because people are looking to, invest in the cheapest way possible to make the greatest income stream. And that's great for 1 or 2 years, but it doesn't do wonders for our industry. And, long term, it can be, it can affect your financial returns as well.
Adam, you've had a phenomenal career. And I've really enjoyed talking to you. I feel like I could talk to you for a significant amount of time. So thank you for being so open, candid, and sharing some of the kind of the lessons and journeys and stories along the way. And I'm excited to see what you and the team go on to do.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the People, Property, Place podcast. If you found it insightful, feel free to share it with a friend or colleague. Give us a rating, like, or comment. It helps tremendously. It'd be great to hear from you on LinkedIn. I'm super open-minded to recommendations of guests that we should have on the show or areas of the market we should explore further. So do drop me a message. The People, Property, Place podcast is powered by Rockborn. The team recruit leadership and future leadership hires for real estate owners, funds, investors, and developers. So if you're looking to hire top talent for your business, head over to the website www.rockborn.com, where you'll be able to find a wealth of information, or feel free to drop me a message on LinkedIn. Have a great day wherever you are, and I look forward to catching you